What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Batman News Weekly. This is episode 172 in year 4, and this is our annual top 10 list video, or I should say podcast. But if you're watching this on YouTube, it is a video. So yes, if you guys have never experienced this before, what we do is every year, the final week of the year, we gather our top 10 Batman stories or series for that year. And so if you're new to the podcast, this is the first time you've ever listened, it's the first time you ever watched on YouTube, we cover everything Batman and also characters that involve Batman. So you might see some series on this list that you're like, wait a minute, that's not Batman, but they're part of the Batman universe, so we include them. So just FYI. But we are going to go diving right into this, ladies and gentlemen, because me and Clay both have our 10. Let's see how many of them match up. So it'll be pretty interesting. But Clay, do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, let's go ahead. I will go first. Of course, we're going to do our honorable mentions first.
Yeah.
I have 2 under my honorable mentions. My first honorable mention is going to be Robin and Batman number 3. I forgot
about that series.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed this ending. I think it had a very, very good ending compared to everything else we had read in issues 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
This issue actually came out, I believe, at the end of January or the end of February, very early on in this year.
Yeah.
But I really loved how the first 2 issues we saw a very angsty, angry Dick Grayson. And then at the very end, we were afraid that, oh man, this is going to stray away and it's not going to be like something that should be in continuity and everything. We're probably not going to like this Dick Grayson, but it ended up turning out exactly the way it should have. And it was very lighthearted. So it just really surprised me with the ending, and that's why it's in my honorable mentions.
Nice. So that's one of them. What's the other one?
My other one is Urban Legends number 17.
Okay.
This was a story with Batman and the Flash facing off against Captain Cold and Mr. Freeze. This was a story that I really enjoyed because, of course, there's the gimmick of like the ice characters.
Yeah.
But it had a moment where, of course, Captain Cold is not a Batman villain, but Batman was able to talk down Captain Cold in a way of like, hey, like, if you do the right thing, I will help you in any way possible. And that's exactly what we know Batman to be, is like, hey, I am always willing to give somebody a second chance to do good in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I really, really enjoyed out of that story.
Nice. Yeah. So one thing I do want to point out is we are including series here. We kind of talked about it on last week's podcast that it wouldn't be fair to include like 7 issues of one series. So sometimes you hear me like, this is my number 9 when it's actually a full series of issues. So think of it in that way. I will say I just thought of this book and I really enjoyed it, but I guess I would have to have 3 honorable mentions since I just remembered this. But it was that racer story that was in, I think, Urban Legends, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I'm not too sure what issue of Urban Legends. It was the most recent one. But it was this really awesome racer story where Batman was being outrun by essentially a driver. It felt like Driver, the movie. And I thought it was really awesome to create a new character like this that had Speed Force powers, but not like the Flash. They just tapped into the Speed Force to use as an eraser, like a racing car. And what I really loved about that story was it involved Two-Face without involving Two-Face. Yeah. And I really, really enjoyed that. And so that would be an honorable mention. But the other 2 are series. One being Nightwing. I've really enjoyed Nightwing, especially I appreciate it so much more now because of what we got prior to Tom Taylor jumping on Nightwing. So like I've really enjoyed reading Nightwing being Nightwing. We talked about this on the last podcast that I do have some gripes with it. And I do think the reason why I didn't make it onto my top 10 was I have felt like the last 2 issues have been kind of lackluster in my opinion. And so it didn't get onto my list. But I have really been enjoying seeing like this breath of fresh air from this Nightwing series. And lastly, this would have been a controversial, so it's why I kept it off. And I would say the Human Target. because it's had Batman in it, but it is not in my top 10. I wanted to avoid the controversy. I already have a lot of Tom King on this list.
Wow.
So I kept the Human Target off because I think, Batman's technically in that book maybe 3 issues out of the 9 that have come out. So I have kept it off the list, but it is an honorable mention because I think that series is fantastic. So it is not on my top 10. But yeah, Clay, so what is your top 10? What is your number 10? Did you actually put them in a particular order?
I think I did. For the most part, I think it was like my number 10 is the reason. Well, I'll just go with what my number 10 is.
Okay.
So my number 10 is Nightwing number 88.
Okay.
We did say that some things are going to be individual issues, some things may be series. I have a little bit of both. Nightwing number 88. This is particularly a Titans team up. And it was, I think, whenever Nightwing has the chance to team up with the Titans, it's always fun. And it was kind of a nonsense issue. It was just like, hey, the gimmick of Titans teaming up, and Nightwing gets his new suit. That was basically it. And it's kind of a nothing burger, but it's a fun nothing burger.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. My number 10 is, and it's not a particular issue, but it's Batcat. I didn't feel like Batcat could go any higher than 10 just because it technically started in 2021.
Yeah.
So it's carrying over from a previous year. That might shock a lot of people. They might think like Batcat should be way higher, but I
thought it was going to be a little higher than 10.
Yes. I love this series. And if I wasn't thinking, like, if it would have started all happened in this year, it probably would have been way higher. But just because it's been carried over, I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and, like, I don't want to, there's a lot of Tom King on this list. So I'm just saying, like, Batcat number 10 for me. I think it's a fantastic series. Obviously, I don't even need to go on about it because I gush about it every time that it came on here. I will say, still kind of annoys me that Clay didn't do 3 of those issues. And I think that's part of it. I got it. I will say that the hardcover, I bought it recently, looks fantastic. So that is really cool. I think the overall story of Batcat is great, but I wanted to put it at the bottom just because it did start in 2021. So, I think there was a little delay in it, right? That's why, because we got the first issue in 2021. I'm pretty sure. And then there was we got 4 issues or something like that. And there was a delay and then we got everything else. So that's kind of what I'll go with. But yeah, that was my number 10.
Very nice. So the start of course, my number 9 is going to be World's Finest number 4.
Okay.
And the reason why I put number 4 specifically is this is the Superman Batman fusion dance with the Green Lantern ring.
Yeah.
This was absolutely wild. We did not expect this to be a legitimate thing, especially with the Superman and Batman that we know. We assumed after seeing a cover that this was going to be something of like Another Earth or something. No, this actually happened to the main continuity Batman and Superman. And it's crazy to think about. It's absolutely crazy to think about that this is something that the editors allowed to happen and then be like, yeah, this actually happened in DC continuity.
Yeah. It's crazy that we confuse Batman and Superman, but Batman can't be married. I'm pretty sure Fusion Dance is a little worse, but whatever. But yeah, that was actually a great issue. Still wild. We kind of talked about there being a mystery Batman character at the end of was it Dawn or Crisis in the last issue, and I'm curious if that has anything to do with it because it's Lazarus Planet, Dawn of DC. Yeah, I don't know. There's this super powered Batman, Joker, Green Lantern, Superman type thing that's going on. So curious on who that character is going to be. My number 9, another Tom King book, and it's Riddler One Bad Day. Out of all the Bad Day books, his is the best. I would love for somebody to try to argue that it's not, because I think some of the other ones have not been that great. So
I would argue that the best 2 written ones would be Two-Face and Riddler. But I
Yeah.
can see why you would say that Tom King's is the best out of the two.
I feel like we both had issues with Riddlers a little bit. Not Riddlers, Two Faces a little bit though.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there was a little bit of like convoluted stuff going on in there, but it was still good. But I think they have went downhill since. Although I think Penguins is the worst. But Freeze's was okay. But yes, the reason why I love the Riddler was because I like that it was a kind of a different, not a different perspective on the Riddler, but we got more of his origin. But I love the way King kind of made Riddler be really sinister, or just like, I should say, like a powerhouse, right? Like people actually took him serious. They were scared of him, but he didn't leave him on top of that hill. You know, that's one thing we were talked about, and I was really scared of. I was like, are they just going to make him really like diabolical? And then Batman, he's just too OP for Batman. But then King on the very last page showed that Batman can adapt to a villain that adapts and gets better. And he ended it with Batman being like this very stoic, I'm behind you, Riddler kind of character. And I thought that was just so badass. And he used the lights going out. And I think the last 3 panels were all black, right?
Yeah.
But like, I just love that imagery of making Batman that badass. And Riddler, I think the whole book was just really cool to see his origin from that. Because we always get the Riddler like, oh, I was stuck in an office and like, blah, blah, blah. It was interesting to see that like he started from his teacher kind of like outsmarting him and stuff, you know? So I thought that was kind of cool. So that is my number 9.
Very nice. My number 8 is Batman Beyond Neo Year. As a series, this book was great. The start of it being in Urban Legends, I believe last year, and then coming into a full series this year, I think was a great idea just to introduce a concept of a living Gotham.
Yeah.
And that being the enemy, the way that Terry McGinnis had, done his inner monologue as though he was still talking to Bruce, because that's all he knew as being Batman, is Bruce as a mentor, and no longer having that and kind of having to deal with things on his own was a really, really cool way to progress the character. We believe that there is still going to be more of this story in the future.
Yeah, I would hope so.
And I am really looking forward to whatever that may be.
Yeah, I have more to say on this because that may also show up on my list. But let's move on to my number 8. And I can actually talk about this now because the book came out this week. It's a series, DC versus Vampires. I have been loving this series. If I had to pick an issue, it would be, I think it was issue 1 when he talked about the family. If I had to pick a singular issue in this series, is when we saw Rosenberg talk about, just show like how the family came together and how they really just outsmart each other. And Batman did all these things to make sure that they weren't, vampires and stuff. Like that was such a great issue. But I think over the course of this, like barring only this singularly, not the spinoffs. The spinoffs are awful in my opinion. But this main series has been so good. Like there have times when I'm being like, I was just like, oh my God, did they live? Like what the cliffhanger with Supergirl. I thought that was fantastic. Like, Did she live? Did she not? Or whatever. Have you read this book yet?
I have not, but it's okay if you want to spoil some things. I'm still going to read it. It doesn't bother me whatsoever.
I'm going to spoil the ending, so I apologize right now. So I might get your live reaction from this. We know that Barbara was going to try to kill Dick Grayson. She gets in there and they have this conversation. Harley's there, like, I'm gonna kill him too. And she's like, no, I'll do this. And you find out that Dick Grayson and Barbara, they're each other's weakness. So Dick Grayson converts Barbara into a vampire. And then she kills Dick Grayson and becomes the vampire queen. And she says,
why am I not fucking surprised?
Yeah. She becomes a vampire queen and she was like, now that I've gotten rid of my weakness, things can go and be like, we can be the best we can be. And that's the fucking ending of the book. So Barbara does all of this shit just to become the vampire queen. And I thought it was fucking stupid. And that's why...
a little weird in terms of like, was that her entire plan, was to rule the vampires?
I have no idea. It seems like this is going to continue as well. So
Oof.
I don't care for it to continue, but I loved every issue up until this. I just think it fucking farted on the ending. And that's why it's so low on this list. If it would have landed the ending, this would have probably been in my top 3 because I really enjoyed vampires. And I'm kind of over the gimmicky shit that they've been doing a lot lately. So yeah, so that's my number 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
So my number 7 is Catwoman Lonely City.
Damn.
This
Okay.
this book was great as well. Of course, it's kind of the reason why it's so low is I did consider the fact that it was not only in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
We did get a few issues in 2021, but one thing that we have to remember, this was all done by one individual.
Yeah.
The art, the color, the dialogue, the letters, everything, all one individual. This was a great story. Every single book wanted, like, after reading every single issue, I wanted more. It kept to the tease of what that like conclusion was, as far as like what really happened to Batman, what happened on that fateful day. We started getting a little teases of like, okay, he definitely died. Okay, how did he die? Oh, there was a bomb. What kind of bomb? What, and getting every ounce of that tidbits for every issue really kept me going. But not only that, I can't remember the creator's name at this moment, but he made me care
Mm-hmm.
about this ragtag retirement home-esque, group of villains that just decided to go out of retirement and do the deed here with Catwoman, and it was great. I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
Killer Croc, the way that he just like goes out the way that he did, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I loved every bit of this book. Seeing Poison Ivy and all of her greatness, seeing freaking uh the demon
Oh,
being
Etrigan.
a part, Etrigan, the
Yeah.
demon being a part of this story at the very end, and the kind of complications that put in here was great as well. And even the story, we even talked about it last week, because of the stuff with the Lazarus planet and everything else going on. Finding the realization that like Batman ultimately wanted to try to find a way to keep Batman alive forever
Mhm.
in, creating his own type of Lazarus pit. I could believe it. And so I think it was great writing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was that book's fantastic. I don't want to comment on that because I will be talking about it later. But yeah, great book. My number 7 is Batman Killing Time. This was amazing. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like my 7 through 4 could probably just be switched around and they would all be kind of on the same level. But
Mhm.
Batman Killing Time, I put it at 7 just because I'm trying to like, I didn't want to. I loved it. I love Clock King. I love what they did with it. I love the progression of time from like Greek fucking, Romans, whatever the hell it was, all the way to modern day telling a story. I love that Tom King gave significance to something that was just, I made the reference to it when we were talking about it. It's kind of like the Bible, right? Like people put so much power and so much weight on the Bible and this God's eye or whatever the hell they called it. It didn't do anything. Like as far as we know, it's just a stone eye, but everybody believes it has the power. And I thought it was just like this great symbolism for the power of like belief in something and what people would go, the links people would go to get that kind of power. And I thought it was fantastic. And he used one of my favorite fucking characters in Clock King and he made him a badass. And that final issue where it's just all out war, I thought was great. I love seeing shit like that. Instead of it being like, 10 issues of Joker War or whatever, it was cool that it was all held in one issue and just telling us a progression of time. Like, in this time, this person died, this person died, this person. Like, I thought it was really cool. So, Batman Killing Time is my number 7.
Nice. My number 6 is going to be Flashpoint Beyond.
Oh,
I really did like this story. this, of course, we didn't exactly know where this was going
Yeah.
at all. Um, with the in continuity story that was going on with Batman at the end of every issue, we were very confused as of what was going to actually happen with this story with Thomas Wayne. Was he coming back to the main Earth? You know, how was this going to affect the greater DC universe? We thought it was all kind of just like a laugh at the face of 5G because of the jokes that were kind of going on the chalkboard in the story as well. Like, we didn't know what was going on. And this was the book that, again, I feel like proved that you can decide for yourself what kind of person Jeff Johns is,
Mm-hmm.
but he is a damn good writer,
Yeah, I agree.
you know?
Yeah.
And I just really love this. I think the concept of like the Two-Face on that Flashpoint timeline
Mm-hmm.
is freaking great. Um, we had a little bit of like, could this really happen in the sense of Martha Wayne Joker building a freaking time machine herself? Like
Yeah,
that was a little like, but everything else was absolutely amazing.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. That series was awesome. But I will hold my tongue for now because my number 6 is Batman Beyond. I would have said that the first issue, which was technically, I believe, in an Urban Legends, would have been my number 1 or would have taken this spot as a single issue, but I think that came out last year.
Yes.
So I just put the whole series on here. I was like, I'll just include that as part of the series. And this whole series was good, anyways. Because again, like you said when you talked about this, having Gotham be the living city and having Terry come to terms with Bruce's death and him still being Batman and having to find a way to be Batman like Bruce would, I think was such a fantastic story. And seeing him do it his own way without having to rely on a bunch of other people, like not in a sense, like he wasn't being, his hand wasn't being held by Bruce anymore, you know. And it was nice to see that he could still make it work and he could still find his own allies and he could find a way to defeat Gotham. And I thought it was just a fantastic story. Like it's just piggybacking off of everything you said. I thought was great. I want to see more of that series. I hope that writer comes back and does more. But that was the first Batman Beyond series that I actually cared about. So I got to put it on the list. It was fantastic. It was some of the best Batman I have read this year. So that is why it was my number 6.
Very nice. Moving on to our number 5s. My number 5 is DC versus vampires.
Oh, okay.
Now, I don't know exactly where it will land after I read that 12th issue when I finally do and put an opinion to it myself. But I have loved this series. You shouted it out when you were talking about it in the sense of Rosenberg really getting the voice of the Bat family in that first issue. We absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
We said this is how we need to see the Bat family in main continuity. Like we don't get enough of that at all. So
Mhm.
I think that was great. We loved the randomness of the badassery moments of this book as well.
Yeah.
Stuff that we wouldn't necessarily like just imagine in main continuity. The moment where like Green Arrow when he was introduced into this series uh and just randomly killed that villain in the middle of that picnic
Yeah.
in like issue 3 or issue 4, absolutely amazing, really really great writing. And even the introduction to Green Lantern, Hal Jordan being the villain, I think that was even like jaw dropping in the sense of like, okay, well, how is he able to, be in the light, learning that he's manipulating the ultraviolet light because he's a Green Lantern? Like
Yeah.
all of that stuff was really, really fun. So that's why it's at number 5 on my list.
Yeah, great series. It's just, I put a lot of weight on the ending and it wasn't great in my opinion. My number 5 is something I never thought I would have ever cared about. And that is you could pick any series from any book from this series, the Azrael series. I think every issue has been phenomenal. It's got a pinch of anime to it that I absolutely love. They're making me care about a character that is a part of the Batman universe, but hasn't really had any benefit to him. I know Tynan tried to include him in his detective run, but I didn't really care about him during that time either. I know they tried to put him in like the Justice League or some kind of team a while back as well, and he just hasn't really hit. But taking him and doing what Azrael always should have done and had a religious story and kind of just lived in his own world, I think Dan Waters, I believe, is the writer, has been killing this fucking book. And instant buy hardcover when this comes out. Hopefully, he gets a hardcover because I just love everything about this Azrael book. Like they brought back freaking Valley. What's his other name? His full name?
John Paul Valley.
No, not Azrael. The bad
guy. Shit, I can't even remember.
Is it Father Valley?
Yeah, Father Valley.
Father Valley, like a character that I absolutely loved from the Catwoman run of Ram V, and they bring him over here to continue the Valley storyline. I just love it. Like, I can't wait to read more because the series isn't over. I think there's like one more issue. And I'm just excited. Like, this is what we talked about before. Give me just mini series like Batman Killing Time. Just tell me good stories with characters for 6 issues. That's all I need. And I love that DC's been doing it, and they fucking destroyed it with Azrael. Like, just so good. Any single issue is good. So that is my number 5.
Now, it's very ironic that you say that because my number 4 is The Sword of Azrael.
Nice.
And the reason why is that it's so consistent in its writing. From the very beginning, from issue 1, which technically there was the one-shot issue that started it all off, and then we moved forward with the actual 6-issue miniseries.
Yeah,
it has been consistent with its writing, and it knows exactly what it is. And like you said, I think Azrael plays well in his own world, which is freaking heaven, hell, demons, and angels, and all of these different crazy things that we have seen through the first 5 issues of this has been absolutely amazing. Like you said, also the like almost anime-esque storytelling as well as visuals on this book has made me care more about Azrael than I have a lot of other obscure Batman related characters, which I would like to see more of them as well. But what Dan Waters has done for Azrael, it makes me want to see him more in other books, not just in his own story, but makes me want to see, okay, he's relevant in this. I think this is progressing his story more. Now I want to see how this Azrael after this story can affect the greater DC universe.
Yeah, I would be very curious to see that. But I'm like, I wonder if Dan Waters is like one of those writers. He's the only one that gets this Azrael, you know? I feel like somebody else might fuck it up. Like, I'd be curious to see how like Batman would like how Dan Waters Azrael would interact with Batman. Like, how does that go about? So, but yeah, that series is phenomenal. My number 4 is Dark Knights of Steel. Now, I have said this. I didn't like that first issue. I thought Batman being Kryptonian was garbage. But Tom Taylor, being the writer he is, and I've said this on the podcast many times, good writing will always win me over. Doesn't matter how much I hate your first issue or something stupid that you did. Good writing will always win me over. And what Tom Taylor has been able to do with Dark Knights of Steel has been amazing. He has made my jaw drop with one of the recent issues that we had where Hippolyta just got laser beamed and cut in half. Like, that was jaw dropping. I loved how he's been able to weave all of the classic characters we love into this medieval story. He writes Harley amazing in this. I love Harley's goofiness. And yeah, I mean, we haven't really got to see a lot of Bruce and everything that's going on in there. I do have my issues with Luthor being Joker. I think that kind of dumb, but for the most part, this series has been fantastic. And like we were talking about in last week's podcast, I don't like where he's going with Deceased, and I hope that this series doesn't run too long because I'm absolutely loving it, but I don't want it to get to a point where I'm just like, I don't care anymore. because right now I love Dark Knights of Steel and I want to see it continue, but I don't want it to go too far. So yeah, that is my number 4.
All right. Now, my number 3 is Dark Knights of Steel.
Nice.
This is where we're going to start seeing a lot of similarities here. Now, Dark Knights of Steel for my number 3, because I really dig this. Of course, this came out around the same time that I started Game of Thrones, so I was really feeling the vibe. I love every aspect of this. The different factions, of course, is something that I absolutely love. The drama of it all. We made this comment in the last episode of Batman News Weekly, as far as like sometimes we make better head canons than what the comics actually come out with. And we talked about this before. And if there is any large spinoffs from Dark Knights of Steel, we think it should be different factions and how they should come together in possibly another sequel series to Dark Knights of Steel, and how it can really start to intertwine and kind of make the series a little bit more dramatized.
Yeah.
As far as Bruce being a Kryptonian, that doesn't bother me because, of course, I'm a Superman fan.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely amazing. Now, the sister of Clark's sister, I can't remember her name. Zara, she is freaking evil as hell. And I cannot wait to see what happens when we start to see a little bit more. Because, I mean, the last issue we read, correct me if I'm wrong, freaking Laura, the queen, freaking completely obliterated Hippolyta.
Yeah.
So, like, we're starting to see how evil the elves really are. And I cannot wait to see the actual ending of at least this first story of Dark Knights of Steel.
Yeah, for sure. I really hope that this is a thing that Tom Taylor does by seasons, and is not like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a spin-off, Dark Knights of whatever. Like, I don't want spin-offs. I just want main stories. That's it. Give me another 12 after this of the next season. Introduce new people and stuff like that, and give us little tidbits of what's happening on this world and all that kind of jazz. I am a little bit scared though, because Tom Taylor he doesn't stick the landings, and I'm just like really worried about that. Because I just experienced it with vampires. I can love a series for 11 issues, and that 12th issue is just bad. So I really hope that that's not the case with Tom Taylor, but Dark Knights of Steel is amazing. But I will go with my number 3. We're on 3, right?
Yes.
My number 3 is Flashpoint Beyond. I absolutely love Flashpoint Beyond. And I think this one is higher on my list because I love that Jeff Johns was able to take something he did in Flashpoint and expand upon it. You know what I mean? Because we've always been curious about what the letter was said to Bruce. Like, it's always just, we knew what it said at the very bottom. We never knew the whole letter. And Jeff Johns went through here and he showed the whole letter and explained it through panels and what Thomas Wayne was doing in that other universe. And he explained why Batman should trust that Thomas Wayne and why he should believe in him. You know what I mean? And I thought that was fantastic. And we saw that with the story that was playing out with Rip Hunter trying to take the thing away from Bruce and all that kind of jazz. And he's like, no, I know it's going to work. And I have always said that I love when people expand upon a universe without trying to change it. You know what I mean? We didn't know what the letter said, so you could easily have written it. And I think I'm so glad Jeff Johns was the only person that did that, and somebody else didn't come in there and try to do that before him. You know what I mean? Because when it's your own creation, I think you're the one that should expand upon it. And I thought that was fantastic. Just the imagery, like in the book, like there was so many good badass panels in there. I always forget the artist because I always get them mixed up. It's not Gary Frank, right? It's the other one.
It is Gary Frank.
It is Gary. See, I get them confused all the time. Who's the other one that I get confused with? It's Gary Frank and
Jason Fabok.
Yeah, Jason Fabok. Both amazing artists, but it's very similar. So yeah, love Gary Frank's art here. And it's spread out into another good series that we're reading, which is the JSA. And I'm curious on what the hell's happening there, because there's this crazy stranger character that is super OP, but I don't hate him for being OP right now because it's leading to a bigger story.
Yeah,
So he's not unbearable like the fucking Batman Who Laughs. You know what I mean? Because we don't know
true.
anything about him. And I think that's
Yeah.
real. It makes me curious. So love Flashpoint Beyond. Love that Jeff Johns is continuing this weird Flashpoint timeline in a certain way that makes it part of continuity too. So fantastic. I mean, like you said, this, no matter what you think of Jeff Johns, this book showed that he is just a fucking legend. Like, he's amazing. And
Yeah.
you can't hate on him for that. So that is my number 3.
Now, my number 2 is The Human Target number 9.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So this is the only issue so far.
It's funny because
that-
you made this joke that I was going to try to put this on my list. And I didn't even put it on there.
I thought you were actually going to put it on there because, let's be completely honest, this, and I said this when we reviewed it, this book is the most Batman book without
Yes.
Batman ever.
Yes.
This shows the mentality of every villain that is, or even criminal, not necessarily supervillain, that fears Batman.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. You get inside of the psyche of a criminal with this book, and I just absolutely love it. You don't even get to hear Batman's name until the end of the book. That's amazing that you can give out a concept and know exactly what it is and not even like get to hear its name until the very end. I think that it was absolutely amazing of Tom King's. Even Drew made the comment of like, hey, I may hate Tom King and what he's done with most characters in most books, but he knows how to write Batman.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what this book was.
Yeah, that book was phenomenal. I played the like, oh, it's technically not a Batman book. I was thinking about that. So that's why it was on my honorable mentions. But that was a fantastic issue. That was one of the most Batman things we've read all year for sure. So definitely deserves that high praise. But I had enough Tom King on my list. So I was like, oh, I'm going to include so many other things. So I'll keep that off. But I already know what your number 1 is now. So this is what makes it interesting because it's my number 2.
Oh, yes. Really?
So
okay.
So you automatically know what my number 1 is. My number 1, to spoil it, is Lonely City. Here's the difference here. I thought about this for a lot, Clay. I was like, damn. I was like, the boy's really fucking good. And I was like, it can be number 1 easy. But what have I been bitching about for the last 6 months that Zdarsky's been doing?
Telling stories that everybody else has told.
Yes, or pulling from stories that are like iconic and he's trying to add on to them. I have no problem being a hypocrite every once in a while, but I like to call myself out on it. I would be a hypocrite to sit here and fucking slob on the knob of the boy, which is that just sounded fucking weird with the title of the book. Whoa.
The title is The House of Gotham.
The House of Gotham, but the boy is the main character. So the House of Gotham, I slob on the knob of the House of Gotham. But the reason why we loved it was because it tied into every major event that was going on in Gotham and in like the DC universe. And it was fantastic. It's such a great fucking book. And I think that's the only reason it gets my number 2 spot, because I've been hating the way Zdarsky's doing it. Now, granted, I don't like the way he's writing as well. And I feel like he's just relying on those things to carry the story, whereas Rosenberg fucking made a great story that involved those things. I think there's a difference. But because he had so many amazing elements, I had to put it at number 2, because I think Catwoman Lonely City is a more original story where everything is different because it's not even tied to main continuity. And so I think that takes my number 1 spot. But you could interchange these, but it's just that little thing that I felt like it had to be my number 2 spot. But The Boy is a fucking phenomenal book. He created a character and then he fucking killed him. I have said that so much, that writers, if you can make me care for a character and then do that, I was just jaw dropped when I read that. Every character was written so well. I think there was one issue that we were like, it wasn't the strongest, but And it felt kind of like a setup issue for the finale, but it was still fantastic all the way through. I loved telling the perspective of just a random character in Gotham living through, like living side by side with all of these villains and Batman, and having a reason, an actual reason to dislike Batman. Like it felt like such a different story, and I absolutely loved it. And but it gets my number 2 just for the stuff that I had just said. So
Very
yeah,
nice. Now, the reason why it's my number 1, of course, being the House of Gotham, is like you said, this character that we had no clue even existed. This is a brand new character. Go into the uh under the roof of the asylum. Absolutely bananas concept. Why on earth would you let a kid into Arkham Asylum and actually let him live there until you can find an actual place for him to live, which they never ended up doing
yeah,
because he ended up being transferred. He eventually was quote unquote adopted by freaking Penguin. But there was just so many crazy things that you're like, there's no way this would happen. But think again, it's fucking Gotham. This would definitely happen, right?
yeah,
So I absolutely loved every single concept that we got to see in this story of House of Gotham, but I think Rosenberg wrote some of the best fucking dialogue at the end of this fucking series
yeah,
when he bumps into Penguin again, and Penguin is just like, "Oh, wait, you think you're somebody? You really think people are gonna remember you? You need to understand there's two types of people in Gotham. The people the people who I can't even fucking remember the exact word, but
mhm,
it's basically showing like, hey, you're either Batman or you're the villain, and that's basically it. And nobody knows who you are, so you're fucking dead. And the very last panel we see is just quote unquote the boy face down in the fucking sewers, all
yeah.
bloody. It was fucking amazing.
Yeah, fantastic book. Imagery, everything was good. And like I said, I love you gave me a reason to care for that character, and you gave me a reason on why he doesn't like Batman. When, and it's a matter of perspective too, right? Like the kid thought Batman was bad when every time Batman was around him, he was just trying to save people, right? But from that kid's perspective, he was like, "No, man, you're the reason why I have so many problems." And I thought that was fantastic. And I thought it was really cool. And yeah, definitely one of the best series of the years, hand down. Have they said when that's getting released? Has Rosenberg talked about that?
I have not messaged him in a while.
Yeah.
I might message him when this episode releases so
Mm,
that way he can hear some of our words that we had to share on his great story.
yeah.
And then ask him if he can give us any kind of update, because the last time I spoke to him, he did say that they are going to collect it, but as far as when, we have no idea.
Yeah. If you are listening to this, hey man, I hope you didn't get pissed about what I said about your final book on vampires. It kind of sucked. I'm sorry. I didn't like that ending. But it is what it is. All right. So that is Clay's number 1. My number 1, as I had said, is Catwoman Lonely City. And the reason why, again, this is, I am being a little bit of a hypocrite as well here because I talked about Batcat being so low because it started last year. Lonely City had the biggest gaps of any book that we've probably read in the last few years, to be honest. It came out like every 4 months or something like that, which was nuts. So, but Lonely City was just, it felt different when I was reading it, right? It was a book about Catwoman being older. We always read so many books about Batman being older. And every time they show Selena in a lot of those books, she's just like out of the game. She's probably dead, or like, I think Frank Miller made her like fat, right? She was like a fat old lady in it. Like
Yeah.
there's been different, like Selena's just always like not even in the game anymore when Batman's still doing all this stuff years later. And so I like seeing a Selena that was in jail for a really long time, and she is getting her Dark Knight Return story somewhat. And she's still trying to like right the wrongs of her past, which I thought was really awesome. I love the ragtag group of villains that she brought together to try to find what Batman wanted, because she was there when Batman died on top of a rooftop. I love that we never found out how he actually died. Well, throughout the story, like it was a cliffhanger, like, oh, I want to see what really happened on that day. We finally learned at the last issue. I loved that there was freaking I'm forgetting the writer's name, but they made me okay with Catwoman hooking up with somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, that's very strong to do. Like, your story was good enough that I was like, okay, you know, Batman's dead, makes sense. You know, it is the Riddler, you know, kind of screw the Riddler, but it was interesting to see all of that kind of play out. And again, like just seeing all of the different characters, the way he made Two-Face the bad guy in this, but through like
Cliff Chang,
yes. The way they played Two-Face as the villain here, being in the whole political atmosphere, all of that kind of stuff was very fantastic. And yeah, man, I loved that Selina finally, it felt like Selina finally thought for herself, which kind of seems weird to say it that way. But what I mean was she denied, like, she's been in love with Batman for so long and she wanted to do like what Batman would do. And she fought the urges of doing that. And she was like, I'm going to live life for me now. Like, I'm not going to live life for Batman. And I feel like I was doing that. And she doesn't dive into the Lazarus pit or whatever that Batman made. She was like, I can save my friends and, you know, try to live for another week or whatever, or I can just live life the way it is now. And I just loved the whole story. Like, I thought it was great from top to bottom, and it was very refreshing. That's the only thing I can keep saying about it, because we don't get a lot of stories, great stories about side characters that aren't Batman, right? And I think that was really awesome to see Selina be like heralded as the top dog in that particular book. But at the same time, we were getting shit in Catwoman, the actual series. So it was nice to have a good book that was coming from Batman. I wasn't liking Zdarsky's run, but I was getting Tom King's Killing Time. So I was like, okay, Batman's good. That's kind of, we were getting Batcat when we had Tynan, you know? Like, it's weird when you have to like jump ship, but I wasn't liking what we were getting Catwoman, but Lonely City was just like, this is worth it. Like, this was fantastic. The art was amazing. Loved the art in it. And the hardcover, I mentioned this on the last podcast, came out already. I wish I would have known, because I would have bought it, but I can't wait to go pick that up. But that is my number one. But my number 1 and 2 could have easily just interchanged, but it's just for, you know, the Zdarsky thing. I was like, I've been bitching about Zdarsky this whole time. I was like, I gotta put it on number 2. So it is what it is. But that is our top 10, ladies and gentlemen. Clay, overall, what are your thoughts on the year of 2022 when it comes to Batman books?
2022, looking back at what my list actually is, it's not as rough as I thought. Now, of course, we would personally probably want the main continuity Batman to be a little bit more enjoyable than what it has been, but at least we're getting great Batman related stories overall. And I think that's the big take from it, right? We can't just stay on the main continuity stuff, especially when there's so many great writers who are willing to tell these other stories. One of the books that came out this week that I will be reading probably as soon as we get off of this is a story about Stan Lee's creation in DC, which was his version of the Justice League.
Where they're all like animals, or they're actually like what their name sounds like.
So Batman is actually a Batman. It's like basically Man Bat. But it's for his one. I think I can't remember the actual like anniversary special that it's actually called. But I will actually look it up right here. But I'm looking forward to that kind of storytelling. And the thing is, that's not main continuity. You would never read that in main continuity. And I think it's somewhat, like I said, an anniversary special. So there will be more than one writer on it. So I'm really interested to see what kind of tales that they have. It's actually called Tales from Earth 6, a celebration of Stan Lee #1.
Nice.
So I'm really looking forward to reading that. As far as you know, everything else, even, we always say that, or not always, this is what it is. This is Batman News Weekly,
Mhm.
but it's everything surrounding Batman. So even the characters who aren't Batman, that of Nightwing, Catwoman, Red Hood, there's some characters that we haven't gotten a whole lot of this year that I really do hope we get to see more in 2023.
Yeah.
We always talk about how we would love to see more Duke Thomas.
Mhm.
Red Hood kind of fell off the wayside, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Would like to see them. Batgirl has been really featured in Nightwing, but I would really like to see her. I know that the Batgirls have their book.
Yeah.
It's just not a book that is targeted towards me and Juice. I would really like to see Barbara back in the suit and, doing stuff with her. So there's stuff that I'm very much looking forward in 2023. But like I said, this year wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So
Yeah.
that's always nice to see.
I really wish Batgirls would get their own like new names. Like get new names. Like if you're not gonna call them Spoiler and Orphan, like do something else. I actually really like the name Spoiler though. I thought that was like it really fit her.
Yeah.
But yeah, Batgirls, they need to do something like that because I definitely would want Batgirl to be Batgirl again. Or it would be interesting, and you can't really do this because then you would get rid of Batwoman. But if Batwoman were to do something different, I would love to see Barbara become Batwoman for a while. That would be interesting.
Wasn't that in a Tom King story in Detective 1000 when
They had a
taking the picture?
conversation.
Yeah, the conversation was, why do you get to be Batwoman and I'm only Batgirl?
Yeah. That was definitely a conversation. That was that was when the Detective 1000? Was that his story?
I think it was the story in Detective 1000.
Yeah.
It was the photo.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, that was a cool book. That was Tony Daniels that drew it, I think. But
Yes.
yeah, that is our 2022. Clay, if you had to make predictions for 2023 involving Batman, whether that is video games, comics, or movies or TV, what would your predictions be?
My predictions are going to be that just like Chip Zdarsky did in at least his first few stories, he's going to surprise us again. I will say that. I think he's going to surprise us at least one more time next year. As far as if we are going to turn, as far as really enjoying his book, not entirely too confident in that.
Yeah.
But also, I think just like Lonely City and some of these other House of Gothams and Elseworld stories, I do think there's going to be another one. Not necessarily based off of Batman, but a character surrounding Batman. I think we will also find time to enjoy. And I will go ahead and say, like I did in the last issue, as far as my predictions with James Gunn, I think James Gunn is going to announce a Batman related project that we will very much want to see very, very soon.
Nice. Yeah, I do think we get the casting for Batman in 2023. I will say that. I think that's going to happen. I think that with the game finally coming out, I think Suicide Squad will actually be a hit. I think it'll be
wow.
Good. I am going to say that. And I think in terms of comics, it's the weirdest one, but I think, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I think Tom King wins people over with his Brave and the Bold. So I will say that because everybody hates Tom King, but I think he does something with Brave and the Bold that he starts winning some of the haters over. So that's my probably biggest prediction, to be honest. That probably won't happen, but I would want that to happen. But yeah, I'm excited. The podcast is going to continue, of course, because we've been going strong. This is year 4. And, we're working on some stuff. So we hope to bring that to you at some point in the new year. And hopefully Batman keeps producing the content so we still keep having a bunch of stuff to talk about in 2023. But that is going to be it for the final podcast of 2022, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully everybody had a good holiday. Hopefully your new year is going to be awesome and safe. Don't blow your hands off out there, kids, popping fireworks. But that is going to be it, ladies and gentlemen. As always, he is Fanboy Clay. I am Juice Wayne. And remember, Batman is awesome.
News Weekly.